They asked me to serve drinks at my sister-in-law's bridal shower, after I gifted them the down payment for their house. Not a thank you, just whispers and smirks. I slipped a sealed envelope under the cake stand. No one noticed, until the laughter stopped and faces turned pale. Too late. The moment I signed that check, something shifted in the universe. I didn't feel it then, not when I was floating on the high of generosity, my pen gliding across paper as I drafted away $25,000 of my savings. It was meant to be a foundation, both literally and metaphorically. A cornerstone for Amelia and her fiancé Jake's future together. My gift to family. I still remember the weight of the cream envelope in my hands that Sunday dinner. How I tucked it between the dessert plates, waiting for the perfect moment. My husband Richard squeezed my knee under the table, a silent acknowledgement of what we were about to do. Back then his touch still felt like partnership. "We have something for you too," I said, sliding the envelope across the polished mahogany toward Amelia's perfectly manicured fingers. Her expression when she opened it, I've replayed it 1,000 times. The widening eyes, the hand that flew to her mouth, the theatrical gasp that seemed practiced rather than genuine. "Oh my God. Richard, is she serious?" Not, "Thank you, Catherine." Not addressed to me directly. Already I was becoming an accessory to my husband's family, not a person in my own right. "Dead serious," Richard laughed. "Kat wanted to do something special for you guys. She's been saving." I had been saving. For 5 years. For a writing retreat in Scotland I'd dreamed about since college. But family comes first, isn't that what they always say? Jake lifted his glass. "To Catherine, the fairy godmother." Everyone laughed, glasses clinked, and for one shimmering moment I felt seen. Appreciated. 3 days later, they put an offer on a craftsman bungalow in the historic district. I found out via Instagram, a photo of Amelia holding a sold sign, captioned, "Dreams do come true." #blessed #new chapter. No mention of how those dreams materialized. No acknowledgement of the fairy godmother's wand. I told myself it didn't matter. That the joy of giving was enough. I smiled through the housewarming party where I was introduced as Richard's wife, to Jake's extended family. I nodded appreciatively as Amelia led tours, describing how they'd saved for years for this perfect starter home. The wedding planning consumed everything after that. Weekends disappeared into venue tours and cake tastings. Events I learned about after they happened through social media posts or casual mentions at family dinners. "Oh, we didn't want to bother you," Amelia would say, eyes wide with practiced innocence. "You're so busy with work." "I am busy with work." I built a consulting business from scratch while Richard finished law school. The same business that generated the disposable income that now formed the foundation of their home. The first direct message I received from Amelia in weeks was a group text to the bridal squad. Her mother, sisters, and 3 college friends. And me somehow included as an afterthought. "Ladies. Bridal shower details finalized. Sunday, May 17th, 1 to 4 p.m. at Mother's house. Catherine, would you mind helping with drinks and cleanup? We need someone reliable to keep things running smoothly." I stared at my phone for so long the screen went dark. When I brought it up to Richard that night, his response cut deeper than the request itself. "Just do it, Kat. Don't cause drama. You know how important this is to my family." His family. Not ours. Never ours. I arrived at 11:30 that Sunday as instructed. Wore the black dress Amelia's mother suggested would be appropriate for someone helping out. I twisted my hair into a severe bun, removed my statement earrings and applied minimal makeup. If they wanted me invisible, I would become a shadow. The table was already set with delicate china and crystal flutes when I arrived. Pink roses and peonies cascaded from centerpieces that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. A 3-tiered cake stand dominated the dessert table, topped with a confection so elaborate it looked more like architecture than food. "Catherine." "Thank goodness," Amelia's mother swooped in, pressing an apron into my hands. "The ice needs arranging in the champagne buckets. 4 bottles in each. And when guests arrive, just circulate with the trays. Keep them full, keep smiling. No hello. No how are you. Just instructions." I nodded, tied the apron strings and got to work. By the time guests arrived, I had transformed completely into what they needed. A service provider. Invisible except when useful. The party swelled around me, voices rising in practiced excitement as gifts were opened. Designer kitchenware. Crystal vases. A weekend at a vineyard spa. With each extravagant present, I thought of what $25,000 could have bought instead of a down payment. What it meant to me versus what it apparently meant to them. Nothing. More champagne over here, someone called, wiggling an empty glass in my direction without making eye contact. As I poured, I overheard Amelia's maid of honor whispering to another bridesmaid. "Can you believe Richard's wife? Hovering like that. At least she's useful for something." The laughs that followed burned worse than tears. I moved mechanically for the next hour. Pour. Smile. Repeat. Until something inside me, some last tether of patience or self-respect, simply snapped. During a lull, while everyone gathered for another gift-opening session, I slipped into the kitchen. From my purse I withdrew a sealed envelope. White, unassuming, deadly in its simplicity. I'd been carrying it for days, waiting for courage or desperation to win out. Back in the dining room I approached the cake display. With steady hands belying my thundering heart, I slid the envelope under the cake stand's base, positioned perfectly so it would be found, but not immediately. Not until I was ready. Not until they had laughed and celebrated and dismissed me one final time. The tray in my hands suddenly felt significant, symbolic. I had given them the foundation for their dreams. They had given me servitude in return. The transaction was clear now. And soon, very soon, the real cost would be too. The champagne fizzed in crystal flutes as rose all-day banners fluttered from every conceivable surface. The irony wasn't lost on me. This celebration drenched in pink while I moved through it dressed in funeral black, mourning the relationship I once thought we had. "Amelia, you absolutely glow." A woman in a blush shift dress embraced my sister-in-law, their cheeks pressing together for the third Instagram-ready photo in as many minutes. "This is just perfection." Perfection. That was the word of the day, uttered with reverent sighs as guests toured the meticulously arranged space. Pink roses cascaded from hanging installations. Sequin table runners caught the afternoon light. Even the macarons had been custom-dyed to match the exact shade of Amelia's wedding invitations. I circulated with practiced invisibility, refilling glasses and collecting discarded napkins. Their eyes slid over me like I was part of the catering staff, which, effectively, I was. A role I had been assigned rather than offered. "Ladies, let's gather for a toast." Amelia's maid of honor clinked her glass with a silver spoon. The crowd hushed, forming a semicircle around the gift table where Amelia perched on a blush velvet chair that resembled a throne. "To our radiant bride," the maid of honor began, "who has truly manifested her dream life. Dream man, dream house, dream everything." I maintained my position by the bar, hands folded over my serving tray, watching Amelia's face glow with pleasure at the recognition of her perfect life. A life partially built on my sacrifice. "And can we talk about that house?" another bridesmaid chimed in. Total #home goals. "The universe definitely favors you, babe." The universe. Not her brother's wife. Not the woman who had transferred a significant portion of her savings account into their mortgage fund. The universe. Laughter rippled through the gathering as I mechanically wiped down the counter, collecting abandoned lipstick-stained glasses. The envelope beneath the cake stand seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, a ticking reminder of what was to come. 3 days after signing that check, I'd sat across from my lawyer Daniel in his downtown office. "Are you certain about this?" he had asked, sliding the quiet title claim papers across his desk. "Once we file, there's no going back." I remembered how the leather chair had creaked as I leaned forward. The money was never intended as a gift. It was an investment in family. In belonging. My voice had hardened. "They've made it clear I don't belong. So yes, I'm certain." Daniel had nodded slowly. This might blow things up. Relationships, holidays, everything. I had met his gaze steadily. They already did. Now, watching Amelia hold court among her admirers, that conversation echoed in my mind. The legal paperwork filed. The wheels set in motion. The trap laid beneath sugared roses and fondant. "Oh, Catherine." Amelia's voice cut through my thoughts. She was gesturing toward me, champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "Everyone, my sister-in-law is just being the absolute best today. Seriously, I need more help like her around." The women tittered appreciatively. One of them, a cousin I thought, raised her glass in my direction without quite making eye contact. "To the help," she called out, clearly thinking herself witty. I smiled. Polished an already gleaming tray. Didn't flinch. Amelia's mother approached with an empty platter. "The cucumber sandwiches need refreshing," she instructed, pressing the silver tray into my hands. "And check the ice situation. Some of the glasses aren't properly chilled." I nodded, accepting the platter while noting how she had never once used my name throughout the entire event. Just directives, as though speaking to Siri or Alexa. In the kitchen, I arranged fresh sandwiches in concentric circles, each one precisely placed. The meticulousness of the task centered me, calmed the churning anxiety in my stomach. I listened to the celebration continuing in the other room, the theatrical gasps as gifts were unwrapped, the practiced exclamations of delight. When I returned, Amelia was opening a box containing crystal champagne flutes. "For your forever home," the gift giver exclaimed. Forever home. The phrase hung in the air like a soap bubble, beautiful and fragile. Soon to pop. I placed the refreshed tray on the table and resumed my position against the wall. From this vantage point, I could see the entire room. The cake stand on its pedestal, the envelope hidden beneath it, the women clustered in expensive dresses trading compliments like currency. Someone's child, a flower girl perhaps, darted past the dessert table, her hand trailing dangerously close to the cake. My heart leapt into my throat, but the girl moved on without disturbing anything. Not yet. The time wasn't right. The knot in my stomach tightened with every burst of laughter, every exclamation about Amelia's good fortune. I checked my watch. 2 more hours of this performance remained. 2 more hours of smiling blankly while being treated as furniture. 2 more hours until the moment when everything would change. A bridesmaid approached, empty glass extended. "More please," she said without looking at me, already turning back to her conversation. As I poured, I overheard snippets. "Down payment from somewhere. Lucky break with that house. Never could have afforded it otherwise." They knew. They all knew where the money had come from. Yet here I stood, demoted from benefactor to bartender. I placed the bottle back in its ice bucket with deliberate care. There was power in my silence, in my knowledge of what was coming. A sweet, patient power that would outlast their momentary celebration. The afternoon stretched on, a parade of pink excess and hollow compliments. I moved through it like a ghost, present but unseen. The weight of the legal papers beneath that cake grew heavier with each passing minute, with each dismissive glance, with each order barked in my direction. But I waited. I watched. Let them celebrate a little longer. Let them bask in the glow of their perceived perfection, their imagined security. Let them enjoy the sweetness before tasting what lay beneath. Because sometimes silence is sweeter than vengeance. And sometimes silence is the setup for the loudest fall. The minutes ticked by like a countdown to detonation. Gift after gift was unwrapped, each one accompanied by theatrical gasps and practiced gratitude. I'd been refilling champagne flutes mechanically for nearly 2 hours when Amelia's mother announced it was time for cake. "Ladies, gather round," she trilled, gesturing toward the 3-tiered masterpiece that had been commanding attention from its pedestal all afternoon. "Amelia is going to say a few words before we indulge." My pulse quickened. This was it, the moment everything would change. I steadied my breathing, gripping my serving tray a little tighter as the women arranged themselves in a semicircle around the dessert table. Amelia glided to her position beside the cake, champagne flute raised, lips curved in that camera-ready smile she'd perfected over years of being the family favorite. She looked like a magazine cover, blush dress hugging her figure, hair cascading in artful waves, diamond engagement ring catching the light with every gesture. "I just want to thank everyone for making today so special," she began, voice pitched to that emotional frequency that signaled tears might be imminent. "When I think about this journey toward marriage, I'm overwhelmed by how blessed I am." A chorus of affirmative murmurs rippled through the audience. I remained still, watching her perform gratitude with Oscar-worthy precision. "My amazing family has supported me every step of the way," Amelia continued, turning slightly to lock eyes with my husband, who stood among the few male attendees near the kitchen entrance. She winked at him, an intimate gesture between siblings that somehow felt like another exclusion. Not once did her gaze travel to me, the shadow in black hovering at the room's periphery. To my wonderful bridesmaids, my incredible mother, and everyone who's made this house a home, you are my everything. This house. The one built on my sacrifice. The one she was about to learn wasn't actually hers. What happened next seemed orchestrated by fate itself. Amelia's cousin Diane, always slightly clumsy after a few drinks, leaned forward to adjust a lopsided napkin beside the cake stand. Her elbow bumped the pedestal, causing it to shift just enough. The white envelope, which had been waiting patiently beneath the stand's base, slipped free. It fluttered to the floor with unnatural grace, landing directly at Diane's feet like a deliberate messenger. "Hey, what's this?" Diane bent to retrieve it, holding the envelope up with furrowed brows. "Did someone lose something?" All eyes fixed on the mysterious paper. My heart hammered against my ribs with such force I was certain everyone could hear it. "It probably fell from one of the gifts," Amelia said, reaching for the envelope with casual interest. "Let me see." She took it without suspicion, her perfectly manicured fingers breaking the seal with careless efficiency. I watched her expression transform as she unfolded the document inside, confusion giving way to disbelief, then horror, then rage in rapid succession. The color drained from her face so quickly it was as though someone had pulled a plug. Her hand dropped to her side, the papers dangling from suddenly limp fingers. What is this?" she whispered, voice stripped of its earlier performance quality. A murmur rippled through the gathering. Confusion spread like ripples in still water. Someone asked what was wrong. Another guest stepped closer to peer at the papers. I placed my tray on the nearest table with deliberate calm and stepped forward into the circle for the first time that day. All eyes swiveled toward me, finally seeing me, really seeing me, perhaps for the first time. "It's paperwork," I said, my voice steadier than I'd anticipated. "A formal notice that the house isn't yours anymore." The silence that followed was absolute. Complete. As though the universe itself had paused to witness this moment of reckoning. I heard a glass shatter against tile. Someone had dropped their champagne in shock. The sound crystallized the moment, marking the exact second when their perfect celebration shattered. "You can't be serious," Amelia hissed, her composure cracking like thin ice. Her eyes darted to my husband, seeking rescue or explanation. "Deadly," I replied, the single word carrying the weight of months of accumulated hurt and dismissal. I turned to face Richard, whose expression had transformed into something between confusion and dawning horror. He took a step toward me, mouth opening to speak, but I cut him off before he could form words. "You told me to be quiet," I said, looking directly into his eyes. "To be useful. I was. Until now." With methodical precision, I untied the apron they'd handed me upon arrival. I folded it neatly, placed it atop my abandoned serving tray, and straightened my shoulders. "You all treated me like a servant," I continued, sweeping my gaze across the assembled faces, some confused, some embarrassed, some already calculating damage control. "But I was the one who built this castle. You just decorated it." Amelia's mother stepped forward, one hand extended as though to physically halt what was happening. "Catherine, this is hardly the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," I interrupted. "When else would you actually be forced to see me?" My husband finally found his voice. "Cat, what have you done?" The betrayal in his tone struck me as almost comical, given circumstances. "I've protected my investment," I replied simply. "The $25,000 was never a gift. It was a personal investment in property. My lawyer made that quite clear in those papers. You have 30 days to either buy me out at market value or vacate." The collective gasp that rippled through the room carried notes of scandal and disbelief. Someone whispered, "Is she allowed to do that?" loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not only allowed," I said, answering the whispered question directly. "It's already done." With that, I turned and walked toward the door, my steps measured and calm. Behind me, chaos erupted like a dam breaking, voices rising in confusion and outrage, questions hurled like stones, Amelia's sobs cutting through the commotion. I paused at the threshold, hand on the doorknob, and looked back one last time at the pink paradise now dissolving into discord. The cake stood untouched on its pedestal, a monument to celebrations that would never be completed. As I stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine, I heard Amelia's shriek rising above the confusion. "Richard, do something." But it was too late for doing something. Too late for apologies or explanations or family loyalty. The time for those things had passed with every dismissive glance, every exclusion, every moment they'd relegated me to the role of servant rather than family. Behind me, their perfect celebration was cracking wide open. And for the first time in months I could breathe. The drive home from the bridal shower was surreal. I floated through traffic lights and lane changes, windows down, breathing in air that somehow tasted different. Freer. The afternoon sun cast everything in a golden glow that felt symbolic, illuminating a world I hadn't fully seen before. A world where I finally stood up for myself. At home I changed out of the black dress, that uniform of invisibility, and pulled on jeans and a sweater in deep burgundy, a color I'd always loved but Richard once commented was a bit much for family gatherings. I made tea, opened my laptop and waited. 3 hours and 27 minutes. That's how long it took for the hurricane to arrive. The door flew open with such force it bounced against the wall, leaving a nick in the plaster. Richard stormed in, still wearing the blue button-down from the shower, though it was now untucked and wrinkled. His face was a storm front of rage and disbelief. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded, throwing his keys onto the counter with enough force to send them skidding into a vase. "You humiliated her in front of everyone. Her friends, her family, everyone." I sipped my tea, the ceramic warm against my palms. "Hello to you too. This isn't funny, Catherine. Do you have any idea what you've done? The shower is ruined. Amelia's been crying for hours. My mother had to take anxiety medication." "You made me invisible," I replied, setting down my mug with deliberate calm. "For months. Every single day." He paced the living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair until it stood up in agitated spikes. This was supposed to be her special day. Her one perfect celebration before the wedding. And you turned it into some kind of revenge plot. "Interesting," I observed, "how quickly you jumped to her defense. How deeply you feel her humiliation. Yet when I was reduced to serving trays and cleaning duties, you told me not to 'cause drama. That's completely different and you know it," he exploded, slamming his palm against the wall. "This is about timing, Catherine. About appropriateness. About embarrassing our entire family in front of everyone they know." He ranted for nearly 10 minutes. About social appearances, about family reputation, about the financial implications of my legal maneuver. Not once, not a single time, did he utter the word respect. Not once did he acknowledge how I had been treated. His concern was entirely for them. For appearances, for comfort, for the status quo I had so rudely disrupted. When he finally paused for breath, chest heaving, I rose from the couch and walked calmly to my laptop. "I'd like to play something for you," I said, opening an audio file I'd been compiling for weeks. "This was recorded at your mother's birthday dinner last month." I pressed play. His sister's voice filled the room. "God, is Catherine wearing that same cardigan again? I swear she has the fashion sense of a librarian with a budget of $0. Laughter followed, including a chuckle I recognized as Richard's own. His mother, well, at least she's generous with her checkbook even if her wardrobe isn't. Amelia, voice dripping with condescension, the ultimate doormat with a checkbook. Did you see how she offered to help with the floral arrangements after I told her the bridesmaid dresses were all assigned? Like, honey, you're not in the wedding party." More laughter. Richard's voice in the background, not defending me, but joining in with a comment about how I meant well. I stopped the recording. Richard stood frozen, color draining from his face. "Here's another," I said, pulling up text messages on my screen and turning it toward him. A group chat between his siblings, screenshots forwarded to me by his cousin's wife who'd been accidentally included and felt uncomfortable. "Amelia, she just Venmo'd me $300 for bridal shower expenses, without me even asking." His brother. "The Bank of Catherine strikes again. Amelia, she's not family, she's funding. Should we start calling her the First National Bank of Sister-in-Law?" Richard stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "Where did you get these?" he whispered. "Does it matter?" I countered. "What matters is that they exist. What matters is that this is how your family speaks about me when they think I can't hear." "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice smaller now. "Because you already chose a side," I replied simply. "I just finally chose mine." I reached into the drawer of the side table and withdrew a cream-colored envelope. twin to the one that had disrupted the shower, though with different contents. I extended it toward him. "What's this?" he asked, not reaching for it. "Divorce papers," I said. "I've been your peacekeeper, your sponsor, your silence. I'm done." He took the envelope as though it might burn him. "Catherine, wait. We need to talk about this. We can fix things." I had no idea they were saying these things. "I can talk to them." "It's too late for talking," I interrupted, moving past him toward the bedroom. I pulled out the suitcase I'd already packed that morning before the shower, knowing exactly how this day would end. "What are you doing?" He followed me, panic rising in his voice. "You can't just leave." "I can," I corrected him, zipping the case closed. "And I am." "This is insane. Where will you even go?" "I booked a room at the Parkview. After that, I'm looking at apartments closer to my office." I checked my watch. "My Uber will be here in 5 minutes. Catherine, please." His voice cracked. "We can work this out. I'll make them apologize. I'll make them respect you." I turned to face him fully. "You can't make someone respect you, Richard. Either they do or they don't. Your family made their choice. You made yours when you stood still while they erased me, piece by piece." I lifted my suitcase from the bed. "So now, I'm removing myself completely." "You're destroying everything," he whispered. "Our marriage. Amelia's wedding. The house they've been living in for months. How can you be so cold?" I paused at the bedroom door and met his gaze. "I'm not cold. I'm finally warm again. There's a difference." My phone buzzed, the Uber arriving downstairs. I rolled my suitcase toward the front door, collected my purse and laptop. Richard followed, still clutching the divorce papers, looking lost in his own home. "Catherine," he tried one last time. "What am I supposed to tell everyone?" "The truth," I suggested. "Though I doubt you'll recognize it anymore." I didn't cry as I left. I didn't scream or slam doors. I simply walked out with my spine straighter than it had been in years, with a certainty in my step that had long been missing. The elevator doors closed on the image of my husband standing in our doorway, looking suddenly small and confused. A man confronted with consequences he never anticipated because he'd never bothered to see the damage being done. As I settled into the backseat of the waiting car, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or vindication or even anger. Just a profound sense of lightness, as though I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand unencumbered. This wasn't revenge. It was release. The Parkview Hotel became my sanctuary for exactly 7 days. 7 days of room service breakfasts, of working remotely from a desk overlooking the city park, of sleeping diagonally across a king-sized bed that belonged only to me. 7 days during which my phone vibrated so incessantly I finally silenced all notifications except those from clients and my lawyer. The first call came barely an hour after I checked in. Richard, his voice a strange mixture of anger and pleading. "You need to come home. We need to talk about this like adults." I let it go to voicemail. The second call came at 11:43 that night. Amelia, words slurring slightly, oscillating between tearful apologies and vicious accusations. "You've ruined everything. How could you do this to family? We never meant to hurt you." By morning there were 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. By the end of day 2, those numbers had nearly tripled. Richard's mother left voicemails that started with stiff formality. "Catherine, this is Margaret. I think we need to discuss this situation." And devolved into barely contained fury. "You vindictive little gold digger. After everything we've done for you." Amelia's fiancé Jake called exactly once. His message was unexpectedly sincere. I had no idea what was happening. "I'm sorry you were treated that way. But please, this is our home." I forwarded every contact attempt to Daniel, my lawyer, who responded to each with the same clinical precision. "The documents are binding. The gift has been legally revoked. All further communications should be directed to this office." On day 3 the threats began. "We'll sue you for every penny. You'll never work in this city again. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are." On day 4 the tone shifted to desperate negotiation. Amelia texted, "We can work something out. Monthly payments? Interest? Please just talk to us." By day 5 the sympathy card emerged. Amelia called sobbing, "We don't have anywhere else to go. You're making us homeless. Is that what you want?" I broke my silence with a single text, sent not to her but to my lawyer to relay. I'm willing to sell them the house at full market value. No discount. No grace period on payments. The response came back through Daniel. They're asking for terms. Installments. Family consideration. No, I replied. Full price or vacate in 30 days. They didn't have it. Not without me. That reality seemed to be sinking in for all of them now. How much they had relied on my generosity while simultaneously diminishing me. On the 7th day, I signed a 6-month lease on a sunlit apartment overlooking the river, 15 minutes from my office and 40 minutes from our old neighborhood. I hired movers to collect my designated belongings from the condo, scheduled for a time when Richard would be at work. The notifications continued their digital assault, but their frequency began to wane. Desperation gave way to resignation, then to bitterness. Through carefully curated updates from a single former colleague who remained neutral, I learned that Jake had packed his things and left 3 weeks after the bridal shower meltdown. Creative differences about their future was the official explanation that circulated. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. Richard moved back in with his mother. Temporarily, he told everyone. Just until things settled down. The condo went on the market, priced below value for a quick sale. The most telling transformation happened on social media. Amelia's Instagram account, once a meticulously curated showcase of her perfect life, went silent. No wedding planning updates. No home renovation projects. No artfully arranged brunch photos. The house they had briefly called home, my investment, my leverage, went into default. They vacated without properly winterizing the pipes. A neighbor called about a water leak from burst pipes. After the insurance claim and repairs, I listed it with a realtor who specialized in quick turnover properties. It sold within a month. In late June, I heard through the dwindling grapevine that Amelia was living in a rental apartment on the unfashionable side of town, telling anyone who would listen that she had been scammed by her vindictive sister-in-law, that I had tricked them into financial ruin. I never responded. Not to the rumors. Not to the increasingly infrequent messages. Not to Richard's final plea to at least talk for closure. My silence wasn't calculated cruelty, it was self-preservation. My dignity didn't need to argue its case. It needed distance. It needed to heal. With the divorce proceeding smoothly and the house matter settled, I took the vacation I had originally been saving for when I wrote that $25,000 check. 2 weeks in Scotland alone. Hiking windswept hills. Writing in centuries-old pubs. Sleeping in castle-converted hotels where no one knew my name or my story. On my last night in Edinburgh, I sat in a small restaurant overlooking the city lights, savoring a glass of whiskey that the server had described as not for beginners. My phone buzzed with a message from an old college friend who had heard rumors and wanted the real story. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Do you miss them? The family you almost had?" I actually laughed out loud, earning curious glances from nearby diners. Miss them? No, I typed back. I missed myself. And I finally found her again. Later that night, standing in front of the bathroom mirror in my hotel room, I studied my reflection with newfound clarity. The woman looking back at me seemed different. Eyes brighter, shoulders straighter, an easy confidence in the curve of her smile that had been absent for too long. I recognized this woman. She was the one who had built a business from scratch, who had valued family and connection, who had trusted her own worth. She was someone they had never really known. The real Catherine beneath the checkbook, beneath the accommodating silence, beneath the designated role of useful background character. They never bothered to look beyond what I could give them, never cared to discover who I actually was. And now it was too late. I turned away from the mirror and packed my suitcase for the flight home, not to make amends, not to rebuild bridges, but to continue constructing the life I deserved, free from those who had taken without giving, who had diminished without recognizing the cost. Some things once broken deserved to stay that way. 6 months after Scotland, I found myself at a coffee shop downtown, laptop open, finishing a proposal for a new client. My business had expanded, 3 new employees, a renovated office space, and a waiting list of clients attracted by our reputation for integrity and results. The irony wasn't lost on me. My professional life flourished precisely when I stopped diminishing myself for others. The bell above the door chimed and I glanced up reflexively. My stomach tightened. Diane, Amelia's cousin, the one whose elbow had nudged the cake stand that day, stood at the counter ordering. I considered packing up quickly, avoiding the inevitable awkwardness, but something kept me rooted to my chair. I was done running, done hiding, done making myself smaller for other people's comfort. When she turned and saw me, her expression cycled through surprise, embarrassment, and something like curiosity. After a moment's hesitation, she approached my table. "Catherine," she said, clutching her coffee cup like a shield. "It's been a while." I nodded, closing my laptop. "It has." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Finally, she asked the question that had clearly been consuming her. "Can I ask why you did it? Why that day? In front of everyone?" This was the first time anyone from Richard's family had asked me directly. Not accused. Not assumed. Just asked. "People think revenge is loud," I said quietly. "Explosive. Messy. They expect screaming matches and dramatic confrontations." She slid into the chair across from me, drawn in despite herself. "But sometimes it's quiet. Clean. And perfectly timed." I wrapped my hands around my cooling mug. "I didn't ruin the bridal shower, Diane. I just let it reveal itself." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? That celebration, that perfect pink party, what was it built on? Borrowed kindness. Masked insults. And me." I met her gaze steadily. "My money. My labor. My silence." Understanding dawned slowly across her face. He had been there after all. Had witnessed how they'd treated me even if she'd never intervened. When I removed myself from the equation, everything crumbled. Not because I sabotaged anything. Just simple subtraction. "I never knew," she murmured. "About the recordings. The texts. Richard told everyone afterward, but..." She trailed off, perhaps realizing how hollow that sounded. "You never asked," I finished for her. "None of you did. You saw what you wanted to see. The helper, the quiet one, the background figure serving drinks and arranging flowers. Amelia's wedding is officially cancelled," she offered, as though this might matter to me. "Jake left her for a bartender from his office. Richard is seeing a therapist." I nodded, acknowledging the information without revealing whether it affected me one way or another. "And you?" she asked. "Are you okay?" I smiled genuinely. "I'm better than okay. I'm whole again." Diane studied me with newfound attention. "You look different. Lighter somehow. That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's expectations." She hesitated, then leaned forward. "Everyone's talking, you know. Not about you like you might think. About them. About Amelia especially." "I know," I said simply. "She's been telling people you scammed her, that you tricked them about the house money. Also expected. But nobody's really buying it." Diane twisted her cup nervously. "Her bridesmaids, they saw how she treated you that day. Word spread. And then when everything fell apart so quickly after, people put it together. I hadn't known this part. Hadn't cared enough to track the social fallout beyond what directly affected me. The knowledge brought no particular satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement that truth eventually emerges, with or without explanation." "I never looked back," I said. "Never explained. Never needed to." "Well, it worked." She offered a rueful smile. "You reclaimed your story. On your terms." We sat in silence for a moment, the afternoon light slanting through the window, casting everything in warm amber. Eventually, she gathered her things to leave but paused before standing. "Can I ask you one more thing? What actually happened that day? From your perspective?" I considered her question not out of obligation to explain myself, but because I wanted to articulate it, for myself if not for her. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "you just have to let them eat cake, and then read what's underneath it." Her lips quirked in surprised appreciation of the metaphor. "That's not revenge," I added. "That's truth. Served cold." After Diane left, I remained at the table watching pedestrians stream past the window. Lives intersecting briefly, then continuing on their separate paths. Like mine had with Richard's family. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten note in the mail. Not from Diane, but surprisingly from Margaret, Richard's mother. Just 3 lines. "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry for what we did. It was too little too late." I didn't respond. Not out of lingering anger, but because there was simply nothing left to say. Some endings don't require epilogues. At the 1-year mark of what would have been Amelia's wedding day, I donated the full $25,000, the amount I'd originally given them, to a women's shelter downtown. Not as penance, not as performance, but because it felt right. A reclamation of the intention behind that original gift. To build something meaningful, something that would last. My new home has no pink anywhere. No roses, no sequins, no champagne flutes. Instead, it has space, for growth, for authenticity, for the unvarnished truth of who I am. The bookshelves overflow with travel guides for places I'm finally visiting. The walls display art that speaks to me, not chosen to impress others. Occasionally, I hear snippets about Richard and his family. He's dating someone new. Amelia moved to another state. Life continues as it always does. But I no longer orbit their sun. I became my own. I didn't destroy their perfect world. I simply stepped outside of it and watched as it collapsed under the weight of its own hollow center. I didn't break their party, I just let it end. And in that ending I found my beginning. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to burn everything down. It's to quietly remove the single thread that was holding it all together, and then walk away without looking back as it unravels behind you. That's not revenge. That's freedom. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Catherine slipped that envelope under the cake stand after being treated like staff at her own sister-in-law's bridal shower. The same sister-in-law whose house she paid for. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.